The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, October 26, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, writer Jacob Silverman, author of the recent piece in the New Republic, The Quiet Political Rise of David Sacks, Silicon Valley's Prophet of Urban Doom. Basically, the latest Peter Thiel bro. Then, Lauren Ornelas, founder and president of the Food Empowerment Project, on Amy's Kitchen, attempting to sabotage any attempts to unionize their workers. Also on the program today, Fetterman-Oz debate features Fetterman's stroke recovery and Oz's draconian abortions stance. Republicans, unfortunately, now contesting House seats in blue states. Meanwhile, the National Republican Party jumps back into the New Hampshire Senate race. New poll shows Democrats must focus on the cost of living in the run-up to the midterms. Now just 15 days away. Less than 2 weeks. 13 days. Sam Alito at the Heritage Foundation addresses the Supreme Court leak. Bernie Sanders disagrees with the House CPC letter on Ukraine. A Russian court upholds Brittany Griner's sentence. The Biden administration hints at a future prisoner exchange. And lastly, rest in peace, Mike Davis, author, City of Courts, among a lot of other great books. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is, as my co-host, Emma Vigeland says, it is...
Hump Day.
There you go.
There we are.
I am bound by trademark to let her say her...
We recently
coined phrase.
Yeah, we renegotiated my contract so that
It's also just a law that exists outside of anything that happens in this office.
Well, here we are libertarians and we privilege contracts between two individuals overall. So
we'll discuss that actually with Jacob Silverman, who wrote this piece about this guy David Sacks, who you should know about, and it not only important, relevant to sort of like direct contributions to candidates, but in many respects, creating the ecosystems and the ecosystems, if you will, of sort of libertarian, so-called populist thought, I guess, is we will talk to Silverman about that. And then also, when we speak to Lauren Ornelas, it is a follow-up on an interview we did in May with a representative of the Teamsters who was helping to organize an Amy's Kitchen factory out in, was it San Jose?
Santa Rosa, kind of.
Santa Rosa. And no, it was San Jose, I think, is where they were doing it. And they've since closed that factory as a way of avoiding the unionization. So we're going to get caught up on what's going on with that. Let's get right into it with the debate last night. Fetterman and Oz. Fetterman, not a particularly great debater, regardless, but certainly I think, debates are about performance in many respects. If they were just about substance, we wouldn't really need debates. We could just have policy papers be read off at a on stage. That said, Oz told a lot of lies, and really, one of the things that's really important about this, and it is part of the reason why I was, disappointed on some level in Warnock's tact when he debated Walker, was so much of this is about the spin after the fact, because few people watch these debates, and your low information voter, right, who is the one that you're really concerned about for the most part, comes out of these debates and really gets their information from the retelling of the debate. And I think longtime listeners of this program know that I have a habit of listening to the radio in the morning, largely to hear how the AP reports on some of this stuff. I want to know how most people get their news in the morning, which is like 1 minute at the top of the hour and the bottom of the hour from the AP. And the AP basically played the two clips, or highlighted the two things that we're about to highlight. One is the opening statement by Fetterman, which in some respects sounds better than it looks. But he was smart, at least in addressing the fact that the guy's had a stroke. Now, remember, there are two people in the Senate as we speak who had strokes and are still in the Senate, and you don't even know who they are.
And Fetterman is in the middle of a recovery process here, and he's using transcription software because he doesn't have the auditory processing that he had before the stroke, but he's working his way back to that point.
Yeah, it's a speech pathology.
Right.
And part of this, too, I feel like, is some of the reaction is Fetterman's out of his, as you say, not a great debater. Part of it is because, like, look at him in the suit, right? He does not look like this. He feels comfortable in this setting. He wants to be out there and, like, talking to people and in shorts and the sweatshirt and stuff. That's part of his appeal. So the format was stacked against him in a variety of different ways.
But here is his opening statement.
Mayor of Braddock, a small borough near Pittsburgh, and 1 term as lieutenant governor. You're running for a seat that could decide the balance of power in Washington. What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody. I'm running to serve Pennsylvania. He's running to use Pennsylvania. Here's a man that spent more than $20 million of his own money to try to buy that seat. I'm also having to talk about something called the Oz rule, that if he's on TV, he's lying. He did that during his career on his TV show. He's done that during his campaign about lying about our record here. And he's also lying probably during this debate. And let's also talk about the elephant in the room. I had a stroke. He's never let me forget that. And I might miss some words during this debate, mush 2 words together, but it knocked me down, but I'm going to keep coming back up. And this campaign is all about, to me, is about fighting for everyone in Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that needs to get back up, and fighting for all forgotten communities all across Pennsylvania that also got knocked down, that needs to get back up.
Thank you very much.
All right. I mean, so he basically, his performance is like Herschel Walker level there in terms of, articulation and smoothness.
I've heard Sarah Palin do worse.
And that's true. But like I say, what's important that comes out of these debates is how it is, what the news media decides to highlight. Certainly, at least in the print media, a lot of it is about how Fetterman's performance was. But what I heard on the AP news today was that clip, or at least a smaller portion of that clip, and then this clip.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Another big issue for voters is abortion. Mr. Oz, we will begin with you. You say that you're pro-life, but you do support abortion exceptions in the cases of rape, incest, and to protect the life of the mother. Aside from those three exceptions, should abortion be banned in America? 60 seconds.
There should not be involvement from the federal government in how states decide their abortion decisions. As a physician, I've been in the room when there's some difficult conversations happening. I don't want the federal government.
Pause it for 1
involved with
second.
that.
I can't help but think that some of the difficult conversations are like, hey, you told us to take this supplement, that it was going to radically change our lives. And that turned out to be absolutely false.
Turning blue from this colloidal silver.
For some, this is a difficult conversation.
I like the idea that, well, we'll get to it.
Yeah. All right, good.
Government and how states decide their abortion decisions. As a physician, I've been in the room when there's some difficult conversations happening. I don't want the federal government involved with that at all. I want women, doctors, local political leaders, letting the democracy that's always allowed our nation to thrive, to put the best ideas forward so states can decide for themselves. Contrast that with my opponent, John
All right,
Fetterman.
we don't. I mean, that's the basic thing there. Somehow, a federal government that says you have a right to an abortion and this is something for you to have a right to talk about your doctor is problematic. But having you and your doctor, and of course the local officials there, to decide whether you are forced to carry a pregnancy to term, he's got no problem with it.
That it makes no sense. And I think at certain points in the debate, he was asked directly about the Lindsey Graham bill, and he kind of skirted around it, even though here he's more saying no federal government involvement, which I feel like people have an understanding that is code for, okay, you're not going to be able to get an abortion if I have my way. Because Republicans have lied about this for years at this point. They lied when Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, whatever, lied when they said Roe was settled law, and then they overturned it. And now they're lying a second time that they don't want the federal government involved. So even with that, though, the idea that it should not be between a doctor like me and a patient, that there should be, Representative Johnson coming in to let you know from your state house is comical.
I will examine you, and then the county comptroller will also come in and examine you, and then we'll decide, the three of us.
It is like a comedy sketch. I'm pretty sure Amy Schumer did a sketch like this where it was a doctor and a woman talking about her abortion, and then all these old white men come in and tell her what to do. That's basically what he's advocating.
Can we just say, bring the local politicians, bring the best ideas forward? Is that what happened to that lawmaker, or in that case, that Republican lawmaker said, oh yeah, she came and she was having a miscarriage, but we sent her home because there was still a heartbeat? That's the best idea that's being brought forward. It's killing people.
The best ideas win. I mean, that's how the free market works, baby.
And which lawmakers? Like the mayor, the state assembly people, or state senators? Who's in the room there?
As a doctor, it's only a problem when the feds get involved. When some idiot that got his job because of local real estate, that's welcome.
I would have liked to seen him have to answer the question a little more directly about if there is a bill, will you vote for it? Like I say,
right.
The point you made, he's not going to answer that question directly. And that's really at the end of the day that matters. Even when they ask Fetterman what his qualifications at this point are, just like, I'm not going to vote for Mitch McConnell to be leader. End of story. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Jacob Silverman, author of the piece in The New Republic, The Quiet Political Rise of David Sacks, Silicon Valley's Prophet of Urban Doom. First, a message from our sponsor today. IAC Laser Engraving is a leftist-owned worker collective started by a longtime listener of this program, Ryan Lubin, back in September of 2021. The company is democratically structured to ensure any hierarchies are justified and efficient. They use sustainably sourced materials. They couple this with really energy-efficient laser technology to bring you some really unique gifts and products you're not going to find anywhere else. Your purchase of any of their items not only gets you a one-of-kind product, it also goes directly to supporting a business model that is structured around compassionate and worker-centered care, as opposed to the more traditional and predatory authoritarian ones found throughout capitalism. And you got to check out some of these products. This is my sort of my favorite one.
It catches my eye every time in the office.
And this one is going to end up on Saul's wall, and he has already now on a consistent basis bugging me, and I'm like, dude, I got to keep it in the office. We're going to show people first. But this is it's an astronaut. It is made with 8 layers of hand-painted, hand-glued basswood and eucalyptus. Comes with a stand for support, or it can be obviously easily mounted on the wall. And this astronaut goes for $75. You can check it out at aiclasers.com. And they have like 60 other pieces that are like this. They're 3D layered. I think this is coming across here. It has, I don't really know how to express this. There's you can see there's 8 different layers, and each layer is just slightly smaller than the other with a different color in there. It's really super cool. I mean, I'm a bit of a woodworker myself. I can't do anything this intricate, but it really is beautiful. And they have all sorts of, like I say, like 60 different 3D layer things like mandalas and animals and mythical creatures. And there's also custom options that are available. And speaking of custom, they have these wooden puzzles that come in their own box here. Let's do this. And all sorts of pictures. You can get different. This one, the picture looks like this, and you put the pieces together. I mean, I think people know how a puzzle works, but each puzzle is made with sustainably sourced eucalyptus. They use a high definition UV printer to render each image onto the wood, where it's then cut into whatever desired amount of pieces. You can do 99 to 500 plus, essentially. There are 30 different puzzle images that they have you can choose from. But the best part, and the thing that I think makes for an amazing gift, is that you can use custom pictures. And all the puzzles come in their own felt-lined box there. And you can do like custom family or personal photos. Can be made into wooden puzzles for an additional fee. They also have like a photo frame that was shown in the past. Beautiful design, obviously on a stand with acrylic glass in the front to protect your pictures, like 10 times stronger than regular glass. And that's available for $85 at iaclasers.com. All these make for great gifts and also nice little, what do you call it? Accessories around the house? What do you call that? Accents?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Decorations.
Decorations. They're beautiful. Go to iaclasers.com to order yours today. Enter the coupon code MAJORITY10, all one word, at the purchase, and you get 10% off on their amazing products. Check it out. We have a link in the YouTube and podcast description, iaclasers.com. Use the coupon code MAJORITY10. Pick yourself up a beautiful gift. And we're getting to that season. Hanukkah, Christmas coming up.
I think I am going to get something I mean, honestly, just looking at that, I'm not even joking. It's beautiful, and it's hard to show on camera.
Kowalski already sending us gifts. So it's already that time of season.
I know.
Everybody opened them a little bit early.
I'm getting. I know. Well, I mean.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Jacob Silverman was written a piece in the New Republic, The Quiet Political Rise of David Sacks, Silicon Valley's Prophet of Urban Doom. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Sorry, we had a little bit of a technical complication. Appreciate people's patience. Joining us, want to welcome back to the program, Jacob Silverman. He's recently written a new piece in the New Republic, The Quiet Political Rise of David Sacks, Silicon Valley's Prophet of Urban Doom. Welcome back to the program, Jacob.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's. Where does the Prophet of Urban Doom? Well, just tell. I guess let's just start with this. Who is David Sacks?
Sure. David Sacks is a venture capitalist. He's the founder of a website called Callin, which is a podcasting website that is sort of growing in prominence. But really, he's got his start at Stanford, where he was buddies with Peter Thiel and classmates with him. He was his co-writer on the book The Diversity Myth, and a bunch of op-eds throughout the 90s and other writing that helped kind of cement Thiel's reputation. And then he followed Thiel into tech. He was the COO of PayPal early in that company's life. And he's basically a original member of the PayPal mafia. And this article is partly about trying to draw out what are the politics, at least of some of these members of the PayPal mafia. And I think Sacks is sort of the one who's coming along later after, say, Thiel and Musk as big political influences.
Yeah, and I want to get into those politics, but let's get a little bit more sense of like this world, because in some ways, 15 years ago, we would talk about the Carnegies and the Mellons, and we would talk about the Koch brothers. And these guys seem to be sort of like the next generation and iteration of these right-wing libertarian, although they are now trying to mutate and sort of, I think, obscure this a little bit. But let's talk about a little bit about that book, Diversity Myth, because it really is fascinating. I think you characterize it as being a little homophobic, and of course, this was written before Peter Thiel was outed. I think it was by Gawker, whom he ultimately then destroyed via the funding of a lawsuit. Which was just impossible for Gawker to mount a defense against at that point. But give us a sense of just like of that book and of this sort of milieu, I guess.
Sure. I mean, I do find it a little homophobic in parts. It certainly engages in a lot of casual bigotry towards people of color, towards women. There's even a Nobel Prize winning activist from Guatemala who's dismissed as a Marxist revolutionary. But it's really a book about the early to mid-90s culture wars, starting on the Stanford campus, where there was kind of a conservative counter-revolution almost, or counter-reaction to the 60s and to a lot of their professors who came out of the 60s. And its big bogeyman was multiculturalism. That's what they saw as the thing infecting the culture, infecting campus culture and society, threatening speech, upending tradition. There's a lot of defense of Western civilization in their writing. So really, one thing I discovered reading this book is if you sub out some of the proper nouns or just replace multiculturalism with woke or sort of wokeism, you get a lot of the same arguments that are happening today. So I think it's one thing to say, hey, these guys probably haven't changed. I think that's one thing worth paying attention to. But also the kind of culture warring we're seeing, it's playing out a little differently perhaps, or it's inflected by social media, shaped by social media. But you go back to the early to mid-90s, and people like Peter Thiel and David Sacks were fighting a lot of these same battles, writing against affirmative action or perceived sort of sexual mores they didn't agree with, things like that, or simply heckling gay people as some of their friends did.
And I should add, and I think this is important too, because Sacks now, you say, is identifying himself. I've moved from libertarian to populist. I should add that at that time, in the early 90s, Pat Buchanan was on the scene, running against George Herbert Walker Bush, referred to himself as or maybe after that as a paleocon, and maybe it was 5 or 10 years later they started to use that term paleocon, but it's really John Bircher stuff, and but also in the guise of some type of populism, we should say, and so. And I would also say that if you look at Tucker Carlson's trajectory, exactly the same thing. identified as sort of a libertarian leaning in the late 90s. I mean, this is the same trajectory, but all they have done is basically come back to where Pat Buchanan was. I mean, almost identical policy prescriptions. And this is the guy who announced we're in a culture war in 1992 at the Republican National Convention. So this stuff is all like as much. It is the classic reactionary stuff, right? Like where I'm maintaining the exact hierarchies that have existed in this country since inception, but I'm dressing them up in the context of something new and rebellious. So track for us what he's been doing. Like he got his money from PayPal. I mean, where did the money come from, and where is it flowing to at this point?
Sure. So he PayPal was his first big job. I mean, he's done a solid tour of the tech industry and has good credentials as an executive. He was CEO of a company called Yammer, which is a social media company for business. He's credited with help turn, and that was sold to Microsoft, I believe. So he probably got a good payout there. His exact wealth isn't known, but I would say easily in the hundreds of billions. I don't know if he's a billionaire, but he then also is credited with helping turn around a company called Zenefits, which is sort of, I believe, an HR company of sorts. And then he struck out mostly on his own, I believe, with Kraft Ventures, which is his VC firm. He's done some other things. I mean, I think there are some interesting things about him. He produced the movie. This didn't make into my article, but he was one of the executive producers, I believe, on Thank You for Smoking. He just helped produce a movie about, I think it was about Salvador Dali with Ben Kingsley. So you know, he's a guy interested in politics and culture, and who's steadily ascended the tech ladder while maintaining these early PayPal connections that have really helped define, I think, this reactionary tech sphere.
What is it about PayPal, right? Because we know Peter Thiel's the godfather, really, of this kind of new branch of conservative funder that, as Sam says, right, the branding is as something new and rebellious, but in a sense, they're still, like, they might be isolationist a bit with foreign policy, but when it comes to domestic policy, it's all about, like, free market libertarian ideology, which is indistinguishable from what, say, you know, the Kochs wanted, but they're more corporate suits as opposed to Silicon Valley kind of rebels, is how they're trying to brand themselves. But what is it about PayPal? Is it really just like Peter Thiel's influence that kind of birthed these people, or I mean, because it does extend beyond. I think this kind of like funder is not confined to PayPal, but a lot of it comes back to this.
Yeah, it is startling sort of how many major companies kind of owe their influence to PayPal or were founded by someone there. I mean, PayPal was almost exclusively white men. There were a couple non-white men, including the founders of YouTube. They went from PayPal to found YouTube. But, you know, supposedly there were rules even sort of unofficially early on against women and people of color. But it's known as this boys network. And, you know, their dream originally actually represents something like the crypto dream today, which was sort of a borderless, stateless currency. A lot of that obviously got put by the wayside, and it became this huge monetary payments network that was very much regulated and worked within banks and the law. But it was such a phenomenal success, and they've made some astute judgments since then in some of their investments. I mean, certainly they've had some failures, but it's just really been this spawning ground for a lot of the big companies in tech, but also a lot of the kind of conservative political activism. I mean, I think you'll find people on the left and, well, left sort of generally, but on the right in tech who are donating money. But Peter Thiel and sort of his like-minded network give off an impression of being more organized, more committed, more ideological. And I'm not saying that Sachs is exactly like Thiel, but he's his former co-writer, they're friends. They do share a lot of ideas. And he donates to Thiel's guys, to Blake Masters and J.D. Vance. He holds these fundraisers, including with Keith Rabois, I believe is his name, who's in my article, who's another PayPal Mafia guy. So this network has managed to kind of hold itself together while its members go and become phenomenally successful elsewhere.
He also was a huge funder of the Chesa Boudin recall.
Right.
I mean,
right.
huge.
So I think Yeah, and I think this is what's really important to realize that, I'm trying to be descriptive here. What are these guys actually doing? Where's the money going, as you asked earlier in this segment? And so the money is going to things like all these recall elections against progressive DAs, against Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, which also failed. So that's the idea, I think, more broadly. Sachs has talked about replicating this model across the country where they were actually successful in recalling Chesa Boudin. It was essentially this union of big developers and reactionary big tech. And David Sachs was certainly one of the most valuable people behind that, and he was one of the biggest fundraisers. So
1/3 you wrote. That's nuts. I mean, the idea that 1/3 of all that money, I mean, obviously it's politically aligned, but the idea that 1/3 of that money comes from essentially one source is just nuts to me.
Yeah, and there's a difficulty in finding out also where some of the money is going or coming from. The woman who was appointed Boudin's replacement, she had worked for Boudin, then quit, become an unofficial spokesperson of the opposition campaign. After she got appointed as his replacement, she revealed, actually, this other opposition group or recall group paid me $150,000, which was, of course, sponsored by a billionaire developer. So you start digging into this stuff and you realize there's a lot of money out there. I mean, even there's a woman named Michelle Tandler who's sort of become notorious as an anti-San Francisco influencer. She's someone who says that there's meth and dog poop and, and disease everywhere and things like that. She no longer lives in San Francisco. But her small startup is funded by David Sachs. So I think you see that this wasn't in my article, but there's a VC who's a friend of Sachs. He's on his podcast named Jason Calacanis. Calacanis doesn't live in San Francisco, but he funded a journalist to start a Substack about crime in San Francisco. It was above board. We knew what was happening, but I think that's how you're seeing money flowing in different ways through sort of covert, supposedly grassroots recall campaigns, but also through new types of media, podcasting, hiring people to be reporters and dig up dirt. And one last thing I'll say is, since my article came out, I've heard from a number of people who work generally in city politics or education in in San Francisco. And what a lot of them feel like, I think, is that, yeah, they have problems in policing and education, these other city systems, but they're losing control because there's all this outside money flooding in, and they don't always know from where or to what end. And there's a sense that kind of governance is being undermined by all this money.
Let's talk about Colin. He's put $12 million into it. I mean, I guess if you've got his kind of money, that's not necessarily a lot. But is there a sense that he anticipates making a lot of money from this? I mean, I am really skeptical, particularly at this stage in the sort of trajectory of the podcast world. Is something I watch in terms of this technology, right? Like, there was a boon like 4 or 5 years ago where money was rushing into this space because it was going to be huge, but it's not clear to me that the money's going to be anywhere other than in the advertising, like in the technology to deliver this. I think there's value there, obviously, but I don't know if there's like the billionaire, I want 100x return on my money, which these guys tend to look for in the VC tech world. Let's talk about the other reasons why he thinks it's valuable to put $12 million in there.
Sure. I think that's exactly right. That we don't know if there's going to be a Facebook of Colin or before it became Meta and started collapsing, but some huge billion user type podcast platform.
I think like we know there's not going to be, right? I mean, because like, where's the money coming from here? It's not, it could be, like you've got, I mean, like if you think about the sort of the technologies, this is not Zoom, it's a technology. I think if you got a small company, you can make some money but you're not going to get 10x return on this company because you need more people who want to do a live call-in show for it to have its value. And you're not going to charge listeners. And it's, even if it starts to skim money off of like a Patreon, they have trouble making money on that. Like he must be smarter than that in terms of.
Yeah. I think so, and I think Sachs has been involved in the media since he was in college, writing articles for the Wall Street Journal and National Review, and the book, The Diversity Myth, was a very much political book. Dan Quayle's chief of staff helped advise them, and this libertarian think tank also helped them and sponsored it. So I think he's always had kind of one mind towards a political play, and I think that's what Callin kind of represents. It's almost like a rich guy buying a money-losing magazine, but knowing that it's a vehicle for potential influence. He might make money later because he's an early investor, and there were a couple other outside investors, by selling it, I think, to Rumble or the next sort of right-wing conglomerate. But really, I think right now it's a place to kind of establish himself as more of a writer and podcaster, which he's doing, and also to gather people he's interested in who he wants to put under sort of his brand or his umbrella. For example, the most retweeted account by Sachs is Glenn Greenwald, who's also on Callin.
Now, Glenn's not just on Callin, right? I mean, there are people who are getting paid to be on Callin. Like, I mean, I make money off of advertising on YouTube. I make some subscription money off of Twitch. Maybe we get a little bit on Facebook. But no, I'm not getting paid a guaranteed fee. It really is all just based upon who's listening and what the advertising revenues are, and I get a share of that from Alphabet or from Meta or all these or Twitch. But they've gone out and paid people to be on the platform. Yes.
That's right. A couple of people were willing to talk a bit about that on background. Someone reached out to them. It sort of depends. I mean, you can go and set up a show on there and potentially make some money, but I think it's sort of similar to the Substack model in that they did reach out to sort of internet famous journalists or people, especially people who are seen as kind of contrarian or iconoclast or really plugged in, people with popular podcasts. I was accused a little bit after the article came out of lumping everyone in the same bucket, but you do see some things, what they're going for, especially people who might be just called very online. And I'm not sure exactly how much people are making, but I do think it is sort of similar to Substack, where you might get some money up front to float you for the first year, and then after that, they might reconsider either a different kind of contract, or you might be more on your own with a higher degree of profit sharing. But this is sort of the model now, I think, with a lot of these new online media companies, is there is a certain degree of curation. As much as they like to talk about being an open platform, whether it's Substack, Callin, Rumble, of course, they are paying some people and cultivating some people to be the representative voices of this platform.
And this isn't transparent enough for us to really get an exact sense of what message Sachs wants out there. But presumably, and for full disclosure, I did not get an offer to be paid on Callin. There's clearly an ideology that Sachs wants promoted, and is using his podcast platform as a mechanism to do that. What can we garner about that? You say iconoclast and contrarian, but I guess it's contrarian to whom? Right? Like
that's a good point.
I mean, there were protests in this country for police reform. We didn't get police reform. You could argue those protests were pretty contrarian to, 250 years of 300 years of history of the United States. It just doesn't get labeled contrarian because we decided not to label that contrarian.
Right.
What do we like when we say contrarian? Like, what is the ideology to the extent that we see it there?
Well, I think someone like Sachs is probably conventionally right wing in some ways, though. Of course, he calls himself a populist. Some of the people on the platform, like I said, he hasn't been reporting much lately because he has some personal things going on. But Glenn Greenwald is certainly someone Sachs likes quite a bit. And he was one of the first people, I think, brought to the platform. You have other people like Brianna Joy Gray or Aaron Monte or Michael Tracy. Not all of them are necessarily the same, but there are people who have sort of perhaps been on the left and broken with the left in some ways. Some kind of people who are kind of at war with the conventional media establishment. Jesse Single's another one of those people. And that people have strong opinions about some of these folks, and I don't claim that they're all the same, but people who are generally either traveling somewhere on the right or kind of post-left or might be described as heterodox. In terms of actual sort of issues they're concerned with right now, I think one thing you see is, per the subtitle of my article, is sort of crime and what I call urban doomerism, this idea that liberals and Democrats have kind of failed cities, and identity politics and wokeism has run amok, and we're not doing what's necessary to take care of people, which of course doesn't extend to the homeless. And then more recently,
what is it?
Yeah,
What is the affirmative policy set for a lot of these people? I'm curious about that, to the extent that you could glean any.
I think that's important too. I should note, just for your viewers, that I tried to talk to Sachs, and I talked to one of his representatives for a while. I emailed him and people around him, and he declined. He doesn't talk directly to me that much, though I guess he has appeared on Tucker Carlson and a number of podcasts.
So you were canceled by him. You were canceled by him.
Yeah, right. I was censored.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that's the question: is what are the positive commitments? Or there is a Pat Buchanan style paleocon isolationism, and certainly if you, from the perspective of, hey, we shouldn't rush into a war in Ukraine, or this proxy war is very dangerous. Like I think there's fertile room on the left to kind of to make those arguments. But this is a more instinctive isolationist nationalism. I mean, he's used the language of America first. He's used that phrase. I don't think it's really, sorry, we have a cat in the way. But I don't think it's really informed by sort of like left liberal skepticism of state power or of the legacy of the war on terror, anything like that. There's also a real desire to clean up homelessness and crime in San Francisco and other major cities, with a real lack of thought about how do you fix this stuff non-carcerally, without police, and without criminalizing homelessness. It's kind of, I call it sort of a version of call the manager politics, or Vice had an article, what it called the next door election, about the mayoral election in LA. Really people who are sort of like, I've had enough. I don't want to have to see homeless people or be afraid to see someone ODing on the street. That offends me, law-abiding citizen. Why won't the police do something? But in terms of just strict positive commitments, it's hard to tell more than that, sort of a general ideology of innovation, pro-business. But I couldn't really tell you. They like Ron DeSantis, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And his cohort.
The through line to me is just like a kind of resentment of a certain attitude of liberal politics that is more of what drives an audience where they feel alienated by, say, like what they'll call wokeism. But the and some of these free thinking influencers that seem to be in this post-left umbrella speak to like a just kind of resentment of those kinds of politics. And so nothing positive is really necessary to provide, as long as, an outlet for said resentment is the positivity for the audiences seeking them out.
Exactly. And I think it is a lot based on resentment. I sort of call it the politics of pique. I mean, just this outrage and this kind of sense that people are fed up, and that all you need to do is be anti-woke or anti the current thing, and then somehow that's enough without really substituting anything in return. So that plays very well on social media, plays well in Tucker Carlson. You don't really need to have a positive agenda or say how you're going to make people's lives better. You're just going to make homeless people disappear, basically. And I think that's what's really unsettling, is once you get past that initial outrage that they feel, or sort of the disenchantment with liberalism or with the Democratic Party, which I think a lot of people understand, but it's like, then what? And where does your empathy extend in the political realm? Do you just care about other middle class and rich people being able to live their lives out in comfort, or do you actually want to make society better in some way?
Well, Jacob, it's a fascinating piece, and I feel like this is, there's a new generation of these massive funders who are, in many ways, savvy to they're native digital. And in a way that like the Koch brothers weren't. And we saw that in terms of what they invested in the sort of like a rival apparatus to the RNC. This, I feel like, is a new iteration of right-wing money that is native to digital, very savvy about it. And they're using that to spread their and to create to spread their ideology and to create media narratives that, we can just look at it in terms of like the way that people look at the Black Lives Matter protest at this point in retrospect. almost all of it we hear online now is a right-wing framing of those protests. And they have done a very successful job, I think, in demonizing those people, because in some ways, like, they stay in the game longer on these topics. They are relentless in staying in, and part of it is because they're getting paid to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Sachs has seen his profile rise enormously in recent months, especially around Ukraine. Funnily enough, I actually started this article over the summer before he was talking about Ukraine as much, and it's mostly focused on domestic politics, where he's channeling a lot of his money to DeSantis, to Blake Masters, and he gave $1 million to J.D. Vance, basically because Peter Thiel asked him to, reportedly. So they can stay in the game also because they have money, and some of them are trying to fund alternative media institutions. There is some question, I think, whether someone like Peter Thiel has the long-term patience for this. He's fought with Mitch McConnell a little bit lately. He can be kind of fickle, but I think that's also what people need to be aware of. There is a new kind of reactionary ideology forming here, or at least a new realignment that mirrors some of the stuff from the early 90s. But now it does have potentially a lot of tech money behind it, plus also this population of people who are fed up with the Democratic Party, sometimes for understandable reasons. So the question ultimately, I think, is, can it scale? For now, it's causing some trouble. It's winning an election here or there. But is this going to be something that we're really going to be reckoning with, say, in 2024?
And we should just add, you mentioned J.D. Vance. He is one of the lead funders of Rumble. So
absolutely,
they know what they're doing here, as far as I can tell. Jacob Silverman, the piece is The Quiet Political Rise of David Sachs, Silicon Valley's Prophet of Urban Doom. We'll put a link to that at majority.fm. Definitely worth the read for folks. Thanks so much for coming on and talking about it.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Lauren Ornelas, founder and president of the Food Empowerment Project, about the attempts to organize Amy's Kitchen. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Joining us now via the video camera, I guess. Never know what to call it. Lauren Ornelas. She's the founder and president of the Food Empowerment Project. Lauren, welcome to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I mentioned at the top of the show, and I just want to remind people that in May of this year, we had Tony Delorio on, I think his name was. Delorio. He was from the local Teamsters in San Jose, and he was coming on to talk about attempts to organize an Amy's Kitchen warehouse, or factory, I guess I should say. 300 employees. It had just at that point opened up maybe a year earlier, and there were a tremendous amount. And I remember him saying that it wasn't that it was unique, not necessarily unique, but a little bit different than other organizing situations he had had, because it wasn't just about pay. I mean, it was really about worker safety, and the way that the workers were being treated was the paramount reason why they were organizing. Shortly, I think after that, Unite Here, I think it was, filed some National Labor Relations complaints about worker safety there. And then tell us what has happened since that in June.
So basically, the Teamsters have been working with Amy's production employees in Santa Rosa, California. Unite Here had been working, and still is to some degree, with workers down in San Jose, California.
Okay, sorry, I got that confused.
Yeah, no worries. And so, but you got confused because they're having the same problems in both facilities, right? And so, the workers were starting to organize with the Teamsters. Similar situation down in San Jose here with the workers at Amy's, and they had also filed complaints with the National Labor Relations Board, and they had been starting to organize, and the production facility here hadn't been around for that long. And then in May, they said that they were closing down the plant due to financial issues. This came on the heels of an incredible meeting with the workers, with Unite here, who were ready to organize and get started. So they have all been laid off. These are some workers who were involved in the hospitality industry when it was being impacted by COVID, who moved to San Jose, which is a very expensive area, to work here to only have the plant close, I think, in definitely less than 2 years of being here.
And that was 300 people lost their job.
300 people lost their jobs. Since then, Unite here has been doing an amazing job helping these workers get other jobs, right? I mean, we're talking about families. We're talking about, people who moved to a very expensive area for what they thought would be a good job and being treated well. They've also done a fundraiser to help a lot of these workers as well so they can survive.
Has there been any attempt to file a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board around the plant closing? Because from at least this distance, it looks like we're sending a message here. Mm-hmm. And that is, if you start to try and unionize or organize in one of our production facilities, you're going to lose your job.
Yep. I don't believe that anything has been done to file on that, because they're saying that it was because of financial losses, right? But we know that that's what other Starbucks has done. That is what other places have done. And that's their go-to. That's their way out. Instead of simply giving workers basic rights, they instead close these facilities down, which to us is fairly transparent. But it does seem to be maybe something that's working for them. And honestly, my organization, Food Empowerment Project, and others are here to say that's not going to work. We're not going away. We're still going to tell people to boycott your company because there's still workers who are being treated unfairly.
What when we say workers are being treated unfairly, can you tell us a couple of the stories of what workers are being subjected to? Now, this is so the San Jose is still open. Is that right?
San Jose is closed. Santa Rosa is still open.
Santa Rosa is still open. I mean, tell us, and they're experiencing very similar treatment. Can you give us some examples?
Workers who want things like bathroom breaks, speed lines that are absolutely and utterly unreasonable for workers to endure, and for them to assume they're not going to be having any type of occupational injuries from these incredibly fast line speeds is ludicrous. There's also discrimination. The vast majority of the workers are Latinx in Santa Rosa and also in San Jose. In San Jose, there's also workers who are Vietnamese. So you had older workers being discriminated against, maybe getting some of the harder jobs. You had sexual harassment going on as well. You had, I believe, in Santa Rosa, some of the emergency exits were blocked off. So we're talking about like it running the gambit from workers who are having surgeries because of the working conditions in which they're forced to endure. And these are people who don't have the best health insurance. And the health insurance they have is actually basically there because of their jobs. It's not like those of us who, our health insurance is to protect us if something happens. They're getting these injuries on the job.
And there's been, has there been like commensurate filings with the National Labor Relations Board on these complaints? And
both
OSHA has also been out there too, is my understanding?
Yeah, both San Jose and Santa Rosa both filed NLRB complaints. OSHA did, I think y'all had Tony on before. OSHA did, fine them. Again, in the grand scheme of things, you can look at the amount of money that they're fined and be like, that wasn't a lot of money, but it takes a lot to get OSHA to actually fine anybody. So, I think that was something, to validate what these workers are going through.
And in terms of unionization or organizing pushes, that's still going on at the facility that's still open.
As far as I know, yes.
And I saw also reading that workers were basically retaliated against, or they were unable to take sick days. Was that also part of some of the complaints that were filed?
Yeah, I think, there were a lot of complaints filed. That may have been one of them. I know another one was that workers who were taking legitimate breaks to go support other workers were fired and things like that. So I know that we're expecting results from the NLRB. I know with the San Jose facility soon. And I apologize. I'm more of the activist end of, one of the organizations that called for the boycott of Amy's, whereas Unite Here and the Teamsters are the ones who were intimately working with the workers and who ended up filing these complaints.
Sure. So can you tell us more about the boycott of Amy's?
Yeah, my organization, we're a vegan food justice organization, so we promote veganism for the animals, but we also advocate for farm workers and other social justice issues and human rights issues. And for us, it was, as somebody who went vegan for the animals, because I didn't want to contribute to the suffering of non-human animals, it was incredibly upsetting to find out the way that Amy's was treating their workers, because my compassion doesn't end at non-human animals. It extends to human animals as well. And so it made perfect sense for us as an organization who a company like Amy's is actually, reaching the same community, right? They're trying to they're getting their vegan and vegetarian food out there. That it was up to us to make sure that we took a stand for the workers and let them know that we're standing by them through all of this, and we're not going anywhere, and that we want Amy's to, meet with the workers who are having these issues and these grievances and make amends and make sure, that they allow them to organize. Amy's claimed that they didn't close the facility in San Jose because of the union organizing. My statement to them is, then tell all of your employees you support them unionizing and let them unionize as a way to prove
right
that you didn't close that facility because of their organizing. So we've been calling for a boycott since the beginning of this year after speaking with the workers, and they've only continued, especially after the workers were laid off in San Jose, asking for people to boycott Amy's.
How many production facilities do they have around the country? Do you know?
They had the one in San Jose. They have Santa Rosa. I believe the other one is in Pocatello, Idaho. And I think that they've also talked about maybe going out to New York as well. But those are the ones that we know of. There may be more, but those are the ones that we know of.
When you're trying to orchestrate a boycott of this nature to pressure the company to treat their workers like human
beings,
like human beings,
right?
What do you do? Like, what are the mechanisms which you can get out there? Do you contact, let's say, in this instance, because the product is so closely associated with I don't know if you would call it an ideology about in terms of respect for non-human animals, but there seems to be almost like a built-in network, or at least a cohort, as opposed to sort of just like the broad masses. Like I would imagine that if I'm vegan or vegetarian, there is one of 5 or 10 websites or publications, or I'm hitting certain areas in the same way you could say that, if I'm a liberal or a leftist, but almost more specific, because maybe I'm looking for specifically vegan, recipes, or, what are good foods to get, my protein from, or something like that. How do you go about a boycott in this space?
Well, we use social media, that's for sure. And we make sure that we let everybody know what's happening through social media, through art networks. We encourage other, there have been some, vegan businesses, other vegan organizations that have talked about it. Not as many as we'd like, admittedly, but we do try to get it out there as much as possible. And we did write to Amy's, and they gave us a form letter response, even though we are part of the community that they're trying to sell to. And so that spoke volumes, and I think that for those of us who thought this company truly lived to the values that they claim to have about calling their workers family and caring about the environment and sustainability, they've proven otherwise. They've proven that is all a facade, and that they don't truly care about, definitely not the sustainability of the lives of their workers.
Where can people get more information about this boycott and maybe tell other people about it?
Sure. We have information on our website, which is foodispower.org. Food is ispower, power.org. And you can see we have a whole page about Amy's. We have lots of articles that have talked about it. We have a link to the petition. We also have a sign-on letter. We have over 50 organizations that have signed on to a community letter supporting the workers at Amy's. And this is from unions to vegan organizations to human rights organizations who are stepping up and standing with the workers at Amy's Kitchen.
What is the metric, or is there a metric? Is there a manifestation that, obviously, look, Amy's sales may, I've never followed the progression of their sales, but they may perceive a lack of growth to be, something that is an anomaly. They may see a dip in sales. Like, how do you communicate to Amy's if your boycott is effective? How do you communicate that it's hurting their sales? That it's this as opposed to, I don't know, people have found in, some other product that they like or something.
Yeah, I think that for us, it's more a matter of connecting their reputation than is their sales. That when people think of Amy's now, instead of thinking of that frozen burrito, they think about those workers who were forced to wrap 14 burritos in a minute. And for this company not to think that that would harm them. We want that Amy's reputation to be connected with the pain of the workers and the suffering of the workers. And this company has done nothing. Keep in mind, this is a company that is privately owned. It is simply up to that owner to make the decision to do right by his workers. So this isn't shareholders having to do anything. This isn't a board. This is one owner who has the ability to make this decision. So I think for us, it's more making sure that when people see Amy's in that freezer, they think differently about that company than perhaps they used to.
Well, we will put a link to foodispower.org. Lauren Ornelas, founder and president of the Food Empowerment Project. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for covering this issue and for having Tony on before. We just definitely need everybody to know what's happening. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to head into the fun half of the program, wherein we will take your phone calls. We will read your IMs. We will go over some sound clips that have and video clips that have been floating around out there for the past couple of days. I know, we're really breaking with tradition. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only help this show survive and thrive, you get the free half free of commercials. And then you get the fun half. That's 4 things I just rattled right off. 4 different benefits to becoming a member. 5, you also help other folks who may be going through some financial stress become members too. When you become a member, you end up supporting somebody who might be not as fortunate as you at this moment in time in terms of finances. So jointhemajorityreport.com is the website. Also, don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. If you use the coupon code majority, you know what happens. You get 10% off. They're a great co-op based in Madison, Wisconsin. They may come up in the context that we're going to have Ari Berman on. He's written a piece in Mother Jones about Wisconsin being this sort of laboratory over the past really 13, 14 years, since 2010, of attacking on democracy. That was a Koch brother project through the Americans for Prosperity. And we'll talk about that. That is, I mentioned that just because I went out there in 2010 for the big protest against Scott Walker, and maybe it was 2011, and Just Coffee was giving out coffee to all the protesters for free.
Look at that.
Yep, they've been at it for quite a while. Emma, what's happening in the world of sports?
Well, we are going to tomorrow have our first ESPN OT stream over on the native channel, youtube.com/ESPN show, where Bradley and I will be in the heat of our competition season long. And through the Super Bowl, we're going to be picking against the spread. Bradley now has a 2-game lead on me because he went 3-0 this last week.
Wow,
it's honestly really annoying. So we'll be picking the games and also talking about probably Russell Wilson again, because apparently he leaked to the media that he was doing high knees in the aisle on the plane to London. He's
who cares more?
I
cares
mean,
more than him?
no
Who
one
grinds
cares
harder?
more. Yeah, and more. We'll be talking about that, and then also on the last episode we previewed the World Series, other NFL news, talked a bit about the NBA as well. So check that out, youtube.com/ESPN show.
Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, last night released an episode for Left Reckoning with Brett of Rev Left Radio on MAGA communism that I have just learned was watched by one of the young lads trying to do MAGA communism on his stream, and so there's a lot of upset folks saying that, you know, we kind of criticize them for not really doing anything and kind of following in like basically the LaRouche line of things, to the point where they're going to their conferences now. But so yeah, check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. But yeah, I'm gonna go read some comments.
I went back and watched at least a little tiny clip of one of the Halloween shows that we did, that where it wasn't a right wing, but it was a sort of a post-left show. And one of the lines from that was talking about just a series of references to shows that did a response to another show that did a response to that show, who was responding to the response of someone else's doing that responding show.
Infinite regress.
And it was, and that was from like, that must have been, we did that in 2017. Do you remember that?
I do remember that, and it's gotten a lot worse since
Yeah,
then.
You know what? Like,
right?
it's, you know, I should just say right now, we're not planning on doing anything for Halloween. That's not, that is not, we're just not. In fact, to the extent that we have anything planned, I think we have our first in-studio guest in 3 or 4 years.
It's a big one too.
Christian Smalls is coming.
I didn't know if we were telling people.
Well, I just, you know, why not?
We had to reschedule because you were sick.
Yep.
And so now Chris Smalls is coming back.
Chris Smalls is coming in to the studio on Monday. He's going to be the first in-studio guest we've had. Well, I guess Saul was here.
And
unforgettable performance
around
from Saul.
Christmas time last year, we had
Brandon
came in, but I
yeah.
mean, he's not a guest; he's part of the
Well,
show. But he came in
correspondent.
studio.
That's true. That's true.
That was fun.
But maybe what we'll do is also tag that on, clip it and tag on that. Michael was pretty funny in that, and so that might be fun to do. But we'll see. All right, heading into the fun half. 646-257-3920. See you there.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
alpha males are back, 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 back.
Snowflakes has what?
The alpha males are back, 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 back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back, back.
Oh no, Sam Cedar, what a fucking nightmare. Nightmare.
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them, just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them, fuck them.
Snowflakes has what? Snowflakes has what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black African. And the alpha males are black, 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 black. And the Africans are back, 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 back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black. Alpha males are black, black. Africans are back, back.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy. Pussy, 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 pussy.
So we should say on the IMs, it being the fun half, that Nico on the IM says downplaying Halloween makes it certain there will be a Halloween special show, just so you know. And I am aware of that, which is why as soon as I started talking about it, I had to announce that Chris Smalls was coming on because that would be that's too big of a pitch to, because I never talk about who's going to be on the show in the future.
Yeah.
But I realized I had to fill the void of the expectation that we were going to do something